Hello guys, welcome back. My name is Nathan, and today we need to talk about a big-time centerman that's been involved in a ton of trade rumors recently, involving the Montreal Canadiens, the New York Rangers, the Detroit Red Wings, and more. A player who could be traded very, very soon, and a player whose trade price has been officially revealed. We're going to be talking about Christian Dvorak in today's video and the trade rumors surrounding him. Now, he's been in trade rumors for the past couple of weeks, really, but we've gotten some huge details over these past couple of days about what a Christian Dvorak trade could actually look like with the teams and what the price might actually be. So when it comes to Christian Dvorak, where will he end up this NHL offseason? Who will he get traded to? And what would the trade for Christian Dvorak actually look like? Watch till the end for all the trade details and all the trade rumors, and hit that subscribe button if you're new. 60% of the people watching are not subscribed. If you like hockey, this is the place to be. Now, once again, Christian Dvorak has been involved in trade rumors pretty heavily over these past couple of weeks, and if Jack Eichel doesn't end up getting traded, Christian Dvorak is easily the best second option center-wise on the market. Now, the team's interested, and the actual asking price is super important for a Christian Dvorak trade, but when it comes to Christian Dvorak itself, we'll have to find out if he's actually worth that price and have to look at the player itself. When it comes to Christian Dvorak, he's a 25-year-old American center who, at age 25, has had a pretty consistent and steady NHL career so far. At 6 foot, 194 pounds, plays a solid physical two-way center game. And when it comes to Dvorak in terms of production, in 2020 he had 38 points, 18 goals, 20 assists in 70 games for the Coyotes. This past year as well, in 56 games, got 17 goals, 14 assists for 31 points, really raising that goal scoring rate and being a consistent offensive player on a team that doesn't score many goals. And for Arizona, he was definitely needed a solid top 6 center that, again, provided that physicality, provided that ruggedness that a lot of teams, especially center-wise, could definitely use. And what's most interesting about the Christian Dvorak situation is how it really compares to Jack Eichel's situation, where with Jack Eichel, Buffalo doesn't want to budge, all the teams interested don't want to budge, and that could mean a lot of teams going after Christian Dvorak just because he's the second best center option, likely a lot cheaper than Jack Eichel, a lot less cap hit at 4.4, and is at 25 years old, right in his prime. He's a fantastic option for a team like Montreal that might not go after Jack Eichel, but wants a lesser option that, again, has that less cap hit and can still be a super productive player. Although he's not Jack Eichel, he can certainly fill a second line center role if he needs to, and again with that physical and defensive game. For teams like Montreal, teams like Minnesota that are priced out of the Jack Eichel sweepstakes, Christian Dvorak is their next best bet. Now, what's also super interesting to me is the teams that keep coming back for Christian Dvorak. We've heard a lot of teams that could be in the mix and could be interested in Dvorak, but there are a few teams that time and time again we keep hearing about want to get Christian Dvorak and want to potentially make a trade happen. Now, John Gambardoro, who is pretty in on a lot of Arizona sports and likes to break news and rumors all the time, a couple of weeks ago he had several teams that were interested in Christian Dvorak, those teams being the Calgary Flames, the Montreal Canadiens, the Ottawa Senators, Vegas Golden Knights, and the Pittsburgh Penguins. But we also heard later on from Elliotte Friedman that there's more teams on top of that that could be very interested. He notes the Detroit Red Wings, the Minnesota Wild, the San Jose Sharks, the New York Rangers, and the Montreal Canadiens as some of the big teams out there wanting Christian Dvorak and wanting his services. Now, if you actually look at both of these tweets, you have a few similarities, but one team is present in both of those statements by John Gambardoro and Elliotte Friedman, and that is the Montreal Canadiens. And honestly, thinking about it right now, the teams that Elliotte Friedman listed and Gambardoro listed, Montreal really makes the most sense for Christian Dvorak when you think about it. When it comes to their center situation, obviously Nick Suzuki is likely the first line center guy for next year, but with their center situation now, especially since they didn't get a guy like Pia Suter and they let Phil Deneau go, they have a clear hold at the second line center spot, and Kotkaniemi might have the chance to be able to reach up to that level, but it's definitely a big risk. Meanwhile, you could have Christian Dvorak as your bona fide second line center for the next 4 seasons, and if Kotkaniemi grows into that second line center role, you could have Dvorak at a pretty cost-controlled cap hit as your third line center, and he'd be a really good one too. To me, for Montreal, it makes a lot of sense, and they might be one of the few teams that actually ends up giving the asking price for Christian Dvorak to the Arizona Coyotes. And for Arizona, it's a completely different conference, and Montreal does this that same way. That's one of the big things that's keeping the Sabres and the Rangers away from themselves, is that they're both in New York, they're both in the same conference, but that would be no problem for Arizona and Montreal has a ton of prospects, a ton of picks to give away that Arizona clearly badly wants. Now, there are a few other teams on that I think also make a lot of sense. First is the Minnesota Wild, who also have a little bit of a hole when it comes to centermen. Obviously, you have Eric Sinek, Nico Sturm, who are good options, but Christian Dvorak could maybe be even the first-line center, at least offensively, on that team. And although, obviously, Jack Eichel would be a pretty great addition, and it would be basically, I think, their answer if they could make it happen, it doesn't seem like Minnesota wants to pay the price for Jack Eichel, and Christian Dvorak might be a lot more manageable, again, at a much lesser cap hit, and could also be a more versatile player for them. There's other teams as well that I think would make sense. Obviously, the New York Rangers would make sense if they aren't able to get Jack Eichel. That's just an absolute given. I mean, the Detroit Red Wings would be a very interesting fit. You could go from a center core of just Dylan Larkin, basically, to next year having Dylan Larkin, Dvorak, and P.S. Suter, which I think would be pretty amazing for the Red Wings, especially the Red Wings wingers coming into this next season. But you also have teams on top of that Gambardoro also mentioned. Ottawa would be a super interesting fit. I think Vegas also makes a lot of sense if Arizona wants to trade within the division. There's just a ton of teams that make sense for Christian Dvorak because he's so versatile and because that cap hit is so low. But to me, teams like Montreal, Minnesota, and even Detroit make the most sense for Dvorak right now. But now that we know the teams that will actually be involved with Christian Dvorak, we can now point our interest to the price of a Christian Dvorak trade. Now, the price was pretty much revealed by Craig Morgan, an Arizona Coyotes insider, formerly of The Athletic, and he basically showed us what a Christian Dvorak trade could potentially look like. Now, I want to say this. It's a little bit steep, just a little bit steep, but let's get into it, shall we? So, again, I know I've been hyping up Christian Dvorak to like Montreal and all these different places. It might be a little bit of a nuts trade, but we'll see what happens. So, from Craig Morgan, he suggested this potential package for Christian Dvorak. The suggested asking price for forward Christian Dvorak is a few prospects or a top prospect and a first round pick. Now, going back to what I want to go with, what I wanted to give away for Christian Dvorak, I would say like a first round pick and a decent prospect at best, right? And that would be for a team like Montreal that's probably going to be in the playoffs next year if they do get Christian Dvorak. If it's going to be a better team, then a first round pick is all right to give up, I guess. But for a team like Montreal or even New York, I mean, it is still a lot of risk there, and who knows what happens. But a first round pick and a potential top prospect for Christian Dvorak. Now, I don't think it would mean like a Trevor Zegras or something, but probably a prospect like a, I don't know, like potentially like a Murat Kuzminov if you're the Wild, or if you're the Montreal Canadiens, maybe like a Caden Gooley or something. That type of route, I think, is what they mean there as a top prospect. I don't think it's going to be like a top 5 guy, but a pretty good top-level guy that's widely considered a top prospect throughout the league. Now, for me personally, although I like Christian Dvorak and I like what he can do on a team like Montreal, the New York Rangers, or the Minnesota Wild, that price is a lot. And you can tell that Arizona knows what they're doing here. They have this great young centerman who's cost-controlled, locked up for a long time, and that is super valuable, and they're just trying to get the field of value here, especially with Jack Eichel still being available in teams, not really liking what they're getting in terms of offers there. Christian Dvorak might be a guy that a team just says, okay, we're not going to get Jack Eichel, let's just overpay for this guy now, and I think that's kind of what Arizona is trying to go for here, and obviously Arizona wants picks and prospects. I don't think this type of deal would involve an NHL player, so that might be an interesting case for a team like Montreal, who wants to keep the roster intact as much as possible, but giving away prospects or picks might be the way they go anyways, and it's good that Arizona is doing that because I think they'll get a lot more in that aspect. But for Christian Dvorak, obviously it's taking a lot. But if he's a second line center that is, again, cost controlled at 4.5, 4.4, and you have him on your team and you're consistent as a second line center, a first round pick and a prospect isn't bad, but again, that top prospect I think makes things super interesting. Now, I think the price when it comes to Christian Dvorak vastly changes when it comes to team by team, because let's say it is Montreal. I doubt that Montreal trades a top prospect in their system like a Caden Gooley. I think they'd much rather go the multiple prospects route where they give up that first round pick and maybe like 2 or 3 other prospects instead. And I think for Montreal, it would probably be like a Jan Mysak and a Jesse Ullman perhaps, and maybe on top of that as well, like a Gianni Fairbrother or perhaps something like that. There is options when it comes to Montreal. Montreal's made themselves such a great scouting team that they have all these different depth options prospect-wise that Arizona might want to take on. But I think especially for Arizona, it'll be mostly on the forward side of things. I think Jan Mysak would be a really interesting ad. I mean, they've already gone for a lot of Czech players in the past, like Jan Jenik in the past as well for Arizona, and I think Jan Mysak would also fit into that pretty well. So I think for Montreal, again, that multiple prospect option is what they'd probably go with. Probably the same thing as well for the New York Rangers, who, if they're still going to be in the Jack Eichel in the situation, well, let's be honest, if they're going to get Christian Dvorak, they're not going to get Jack Eichel. But still, in the end, I could see them going for a more spread out, perhaps, offer, whether it be like a Larry Prigioniemi or like a Morgan Barron, perhaps. Those guys would probably be offered, I think, in a Christian Dvorak trade. But again, I think that first round pick is the thing that Arizona's looking at the most here as the most valuable addition. They want to stockpile draft picks for this next draft, as they should, because this draft is absolutely amazing. But I think for Montreal, teams like New York, that is the route that'll probably go on. And you know what? Let's just do a mock trade, shall we? So for Montreal, I think it would probably be, again, around a first round pick, Jan Mysak, maybe somebody else, and again, Christian Dvorak going back to Montreal. I think that's probably what you'd kind of be looking at in a Montreal trade, and same thing goes for the New York Rangers. But that's another reason, that price at least is another reason why I think it definitely depends team by team if it'll actually be worth it for Christian Dvorak, because if you're a team like the New York Rangers, honestly, I'd rather have Jack Eichel if you can get him back to health for this next season, rather than Christian Dvorak, which is kind of just like a band-aid on the problem, and he's not really that much of a vast improvement over Ryan Strome anyways, which I think for the New York Rangers, what they should be looking to do, getting an improvement from Ryan Strome. And it definitely depends, because for teams like Montreal, it's a lot more of a bigger ad, it's a lot more of a fundamental ad, and they do need a second line center, which Christian Dvorak can fill. Same thing with Minnesota, same thing with the Detroit Red Wings. So I think it definitely depends on the teams involved, but honestly, I'm not surprised that Christian Dvorak has that price, has that many teams involved. He's a really solid player, super consistent guy, and again, that cap hit is really interesting. For a team that doesn't want to spend as much, you'd rather go for a Christian Dvorak who will be a lot less of a package compared to Jack Eichel. Again, Dvorak at 4.4, 4.5, and Eichel at $10 million. So it really does depend with that cap hit, I think, is why he will also get a little bit more than people expect. But Dvorak is a super solid player, and if he is your second line center, that's not too bad. And I would actually really like the Montreal Canadiens to go after Christian Dvorak. I think that's a perfect fit, especially with Kotkaniemi being that third line center. I don't think he should be rushed in that second line center role quite yet, but as that third line center guy, I think he's pretty much perfect right now. And you could have Dvorak, Suzuki, and Kotkaniemi, which is a pretty great young center core, in my opinion. And Dvorak would be in his prime at age 25. He'd be right there with Montreal, trying to compete and trying to get better for this next year. And I think it pretty much lines up perfectly for them. And they already have one of the better prospect pools in the NHL, especially depth-wise. They can afford to lose a few prospects. And I think if Montreal does lose a few prospects, getting Christian Dvorak, I don't think that's too bad. You solve a big weakness on your team, and Christian Dvorak is a great player to fill that role. And even though the price might be a little bit steep, if you're going to be the Montreal Canadiens, if you're going to be Marc Bergevin, this is the deal that I think you do end up making. And I do think when it comes to Christian Dvorak, this is going to be a trade that happens pretty soon. Maybe not in the next couple of days, but in the next month, I do see Christian Dvorak being shipped. It just doesn't seem like the Arizona Coyotes have that much of a long-term commitment to him. And especially if they're going to get a first-round pick and a good prospect back, I think they make that deal every single day of the week. But if you're a team like Montreal, again, you're in a position where you're able to afford a trade like this, which is exactly what you want to be able to do. You want to have a prospect pool that can give you better options for the club if you need to win now, and for Montreal, that's what they're trying to do at this current time. But you could add Dvorak on top of Hoffman onto that forward group, and that's not too bad. And to me, you have Dvorak in his prime, Nick Suzuki entering his prime, Kotkaniemi entering his prime in a couple of years. Not a bad center situation for the Montreal Canadiens if they do that. And again, even though it might be an overpay, if I'm Montreal, I make that trade. But that'll be it for today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you did enjoy the rumor breakdown, make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, hit that notification bell if you haven't already, and comment down below, what do you think about Christian Dvorak? Where do you see him being traded to, and what would you give up for your favorite team to acquire him? What do you think a trade will actually look like as well? Make sure you share this video with your friends, get the word out there, get the Grav Gang out there, and click on this card right here to watch all my trade rumor videos right in one playlist. Thank you so much for giving this channel a chance once again, everyone, and I'll see you in the next one. Have a great day, and goodbye.